Hello, welcome. This is your brain on drugs, and this is the punk rock psychiatrist. Moving back to my obesity medicine series, today we're going to continue with our lifestyle. I started with the lifestyle medicine stuff in the last episode, and we even talked about some lifestyle stuff in the last ADHD episode, so that kind of lined up nicely for us. And then I started to get a little bit into nutrition. I've got probably nutrition is the thing that I'm the most interested in, and actually, I think it's probably the thing that one could talk the most about with the lifestyle stuff. Maybe the stress relief and things like that. But um, I'm really interested in nutrition. I've got several more episodes on it. We're going to continue today, and I'm basically going to tell you about all the foods that I think you should eat. We'll talk about. I think next time we're probably going to, or after this, we'll probably get to like the foods that you should avoid. But I'll talk a little bit about that today. But like these are some nutrition recommendations that we're going to go over today. And like I said, like it doesn't have to be complicated. A lot of these wellness podcasts and stuff, they're all like I feel like they try to make it more complicated than it actually is. And then they all are sponsored by like some supplement company, or they have their own supplement, and these things happen like cost more than just about anything that you would ever buy at the store. And they're like, well, this is the best stuff. You know what the best stuff is? Real food. So I'm like, because I mean, just spend a little bit more money on your food than rather rather than taking some pill. Because like people, a lot of people, they're afraid to take a medicine, but they're not afraid to take a supplement, as if it's like any better. Because here's one thing. First, it's less regulated, so we have less idea what's in it. At least with a medication, it's regulated by the FDA instead of the USDA. And so there's a lot more tight controls. You have a lot more idea what that is. There's been more testing on it. We know there's a lot more safety things that come out. It's just a lot more heavily regulated. I think people get afraid of it because they say, oh, it's not natural. But what they don't realize is that like these supplements and things aren't exactly natural either. Um, so, you know, you could break it down in so many ways. And like, the expensive supplements that are, being sold by these like influencers and things like that, it's like, they're like, oh, but we have the good stuff. We have the natural stuff. And this is stuff that nobody's getting enough of. And it's like, dude, people have been living to 100 for a long time and they never took any of this crap. And we just keep getting less and less healthy with time. So, like, I don't think you're really helping anything. I think you're just trying to drain people's pocketbooks. And that kind of stuff just disgusts me. So, I'm never going to be like sponsoring any kind of supplements on this show. I'm going to tell you what to supplement yourself with, which is real food. And we're going to talk about it today. All right. So, the first statement is, eat a whole foods diet. And I mean, I like the Mediterranean diet. There's a lot of diets that are similar to that. I live in Japan, and I can't say that this is not uh, a Mediterranean diet here either. Because a Mediterranean diet is something that's like lower in meat, higher in fish, high in whole foods, um, whole grains, things like that. Like you're going to find a diet similar to that all over. It's just like the foods that you would consume are going to be different, right? So I think when people think of a Mediterranean diet, they think, "Ooh, I like that because the food of like Spain, Italy, France, Greece, that's all like really delicious food, right?" And maybe I'm less down with food from somewhere else, but it still follows a similar pattern. And it's like, you can make this whatever you want, right? If you don't like Italian food, and the thing is, I don't know if you've ever been to Italy, the food they eat in Italy barely resembles what we eat in the United States. So, and the stuff we eat in the United States is not exactly healthy. That is Italian food. Now there are authentic places there. At the same time, one reason why there isn't is because like that's just not the taste that people like. But like if you're eating like Mediterranean cuisine outside of that area, and even in that area, it's not like they don't have crap in the Mediterranean. Like if you're doing that, then you're not really eating the diet. Like it's a diet of principles. It's kind of called the Mediterranean diet, but it's, you know, um, it's more of like a philosophy to me. So let's talk about kind of the sort of things that would be in that kind of diet, right? So number one, and this is like the most important thing out of everything, and that's why I list it first: reduce, eliminate ultra processed foods. All right. I'm going to have like a whole show on ultra processed foods. And we're going to talk all about them, how to identify them, how to get rid of them, what to replace them with. Um, and then, things that you may not realize are ultra processed foods and what's so bad about them. Right. So essentially, they have added sugars. They're highly processed grains. So it's like you take a wheat berry, which is what flour is made from, and you take everything off of it other than the starch that's on the inside. And then you take that starch and you transform it into something else. I mean, any kind of vitamins that might have been in that wheat berry, gone. Any kind of fiber that might have been in that wheat berry, gone. Any kind of nutrition is gone. It's just pure calories. Like there's absolutely nothing that like your body wants to stay healthy in there other than fuel. That's it. They basically break it down to pure fuel. And you can be fueled by anything. You can be fueled by fat, carbs, protein. You know, there's lots of things that can fuel you, right? And so, like, they're basically distilling it down into something that your body doesn't need. Remember, we have the essential vitamins and minerals. We have essential amino acids. We have essential fatty acids. We don't have any essential carbohydrates, because carbohydrates are just sugar stuck together. That's all they are. Our body can make them. I don't recommend eliminating them. A lot of people like to do that, but at the same time, they're not essential, right? So basically, these processed foods have taken all the things that might be essential for your body that your body can't produce. Remember, things that are essential are things that our body cannot produce, and it's removed them. And then it's basically just pure starch. So, that's no good, right? Because you want those nutrients, you want that fiber. Those are the things, that our body wants. 2,000 years ago, people were not like processing grains down to starch. They were just eating the whole thing. I think the whole paleo diet is a little bit ridiculous, but I think the idea of it, of like we should eat a lot more the way that we were evolutionarily kind of conditioned to, makes sense. I think people take it too far. They go into these like fads, right? And it's like, well, I'm not going to have anything that my ancestors didn't eat, and that's going to be a healthy diet. I'm going to completely eliminate vegetables. I'm going to completely eliminate meat. I'm going to this like all or nothing thing. It's not, it's, I don't know, people are attracted to these ideas because they're like extreme. And I feel like people, especially in the US, like extremes. And it's like fun. And it seems like, you're being fooled by somebody and you're getting one over on them by like, haha, I wasn't supposed to have this type of thing, and now I'm doing it the right way, and I'm smarter than everyone else, and I'm doing this interesting thing. And it's really, this is, most things are boring. Real news is boring, real diets are boring. Okay, but that doesn't mean that they can't be delicious and fun. Okay, so highly processed grains, that's something that we want to decrease. Processed meats, I mean, processed meats have been linked to cancer. um, i I think it's mostly probably the nitrates and things in there. So this would be things like deli, ham, bacon, sausages. I mean, certain sausages, not like fresh ground ones, but like the ones that have been cured, like cured things. Um, this link to cancer came out like 10 years ago, and Spain basically lives on ham, and Spain just like scoffed at this, and they were like, we've been living on ham forever, and you can't tell us it's not bad for us. And like, honestly, I think they're right. If you ever seen how they make Spanish ham, they just bury a whole pig leg in salt for like, I don't know, something like 2 weeks or something like that, and then they like like wash it off and hang it for like 2 years. There's no nitrates. There's no crap in there. It's just ham and salt. And this is another one. I really don't care about salt. I'm not concerned about getting rid of salt. It's all the chemicals and crap that we want to um, eliminate. And once again, just because something is a chemical doesn't mean it's bad for us. This is the other thing. I think people think that like natural is always good, and not natural is always bad. And this is not true. Okay, there are things that are natural that are really really bad for us, and there are things that are not natural that are not harmful to us. And so like this all or nothing thinking is not helping you, right? So I would I would try to avoid or decrease my consumption of processed meats. I think that you should decrease processed meats or meats in general. And a good place to start would be, if you're having that goal, is to get rid of the processed ones. All right. And once again, I have to say I'm not a vegetarian or vegan. I just kind of advocate for that diet. Um, I would say I am a plant based. I want to be plant based with some fish. That's kind of my goal. But I do still occasionally eat meat, and I do, at times eat bacon. I'm not going to say that like I don't believe in the idea of eliminating all food forever indefinitely under all situations. Do I think that eating a bacon cheeseburger a few times a year is going to kill me or cause any problem? No, I don't. And so, if I'm at a place and that looks like that's the best thing on the menu and I just ended up there and it's like I'm not, I'll add the bacon, sure, why not? Um, and if you don't want to do that and you don't like it, then don't do it. But I would say don't have that very often. Um, I'd say I probably do that a few times a year. All right. So I think whenever we hold ourselves to too high of standards, we're a lot easier to slip off and just give it up completely. Like give up the plan that we had to eat healthier completely. And so like I don't think it's useful to like put like too extreme of limitations on ourselves. And I think if you're making slow progress, then that's what's important. We're going to talk about a study on depression where basically it was just like try to reduce ultra processed foods and moods improved. All right. And so like they didn't completely eliminate it. They didn't even necessarily increase um, all the foods they maybe needed to, but it made a difference. Anything you do will make a difference. Okay. All right. So eliminating processed foods. So this is reducing sugars, highly processed grains, processed meats, and then added fats and carbs, right? So I don't have a problem with fats and carbs, but like when they're added in, like in the form of like fried foods, or like when you look at processed foods, it'll always say like canola oil or something on the back. And it's like, why is there oil in this? Does there need to be oil in this? If I had made food today, would it have necessarily had to have this in there? Um, they add this stuff to make food tastier, more appealing, easier to make, cheaper to substitute for something else. Um, so if it needs to be added in there, it probably should not be in there. All right. So this is one aspect of the Mediterranean diet, and then another thing is this idea of fermented foods. I'm really in favor of. Um, Having a healthy gut microbiome is so important. I think if we could ever unlock the secret of what a healthy gut microbiome looks like, that we would make massive strides in health and medicine. Unfortunately, we don't know all the secrets, but we are unlocking them. We are figuring more and more out. We're getting more information on that. So, um, you probably heard of the concept of prebiotics and probiotics. Prebiotics is food for your bacteria, so that would be fiber, right? And fiber is basically whole plants, whole grains, right? So um, and of course you can get like fiber by itself, like Metamucil or something like that, but like just eat the whole grains and the whole fruits and the whole vegetables. Eat the skins. Um, eat the don't get the processed stuff and the juice of it. Eat the whole thing, right? And like with grains, I almost exclusively eat whole grains. Like I'll eat white rice if I'm out at a restaurant and that's just what they have. But if I'm at home, I don't even have white rice in the house. I eat frika, bulgur, um, groats, barley. Um, those are the main ones. But like other things like dal, like different types of legumes from like India and um, lentils. I made a red lentil curry yesterday. So things like that. So beans and whole grains. There's just tons of fiber in those, and red lentils are super high in fiber. They're like one of the highest, and I love them. But I mean, there's all different kinds. There's split peas and then like there's split yellow peas and the green ones, and there's all different kinds of beans and all different types of lentils. And I don't know, it's fun for me to go to a store that sells all this type of stuff and find something I've never seen before and just be like, I want to try that grain or that bean. See what it's like. Maybe it'll be my new favorite. I mean, there's grains like farro is another one, Farro. Um, there's quinoa, right? There's just all different types, and these are all things that have like fiber, and then like chia seeds, flax seeds, right? So this is flax meal. These are things that have a lot of fiber in them. So I would encourage you for these prebiotics, get your fiber, right? Like, and there's so many different ways you can get it. um, and those are just some examples, right? And so then with fermented foods, these are like kind of like probiotics. I think these probiotics that they sell in like pill form, I don't think they're ready for prime time. And also like I just don't like the idea that like why do I have to take this thing rather than eating the actual food itself? Like, shouldn't I be able to just get this? And why am I paying for this? Like, I could actually enjoy a food, but this is like a pill, and it's kind of like omega 3s. It's like we know they're important, but the omega 3 pills, the, there's not a lot of evidence that they help, but we know omega 3s are super good for us. But then why is this? I mean, because that's actual fish oil. Like they actually get that from fish and they put it inside a pill. And it's like, why is it not as effective? Obviously there's other stuff going on in that whole food that make it important. I mean, this is kind of this ultra processed idea that like we're going to distill out the thing that we think is the most important, throw everything else away, and then in isolation think that this is going to be good for us. And it just isn't. It just eat the thing that it comes from. Okay. So some ideas for fermented foods. So kefir, that some people call it, what do they call it? I call it kefir. I've heard it kefir, but like that's not a correct way to say it. There's another correct way to say it that I can't remember. Kefir, which I think sounds stupid. I don't like kefir. I think it sounds ridiculous, but that's okay if you say it that way. I prefer kefir. I kind of like kefir, but then I found out that that's not really. But like, it doesn't really matter. Call it whatever you like. I love it. Um, I use it in place of yogurt. I put it in smoothies. I mix it with yogurt to make like I get a really like thick, delicious, high protein yogurt. And if I want to thin that out, I'll to like make a like a bowl with like frozen fruit and like things in it. I'll put some kefir in there. So kefir, sauerkraut's another great one. You can make your own sauerkraut. I'll talk about that in a second. Um, I've heard that the sauerkraut in the jar, that the bacteria in there may not be alive, but the one in the plastic bag is. So you may want to think about that. Kimchi, another good one. A lot of flavor, spice. I already mentioned yogurt, but make sure this is just plain yogurt. I would prefer like a Greek yogurt. I also like the Icelandic yogurt, which is called skyr. I used to eat skyr every day for lunch when I went to work. Um, And when I was going to the office night, needed something easy for lunch, I would bring Skyr, Skyr. Um, it's got a little bit of sugar in it, but it's pretty low. It's really high in protein. Um, and I've heard it's actually technically not yogurt; it's some kind of cheese, even though it doesn't taste like that. But I would advocate for Skyr, but you just want to watch the sugar content on that. Kombucha, it's another good one, but once again, watch the sugar content on that. Um, it's better than I mean, here's the other thing: if you are having a soda and you're going to switch to kombucha, you're lowering your sugar content by like 2 to 3 fold. So sometimes it's about just making us small incremental changes that are slightly better, but maybe not the goal, and being satisfied with that, and then kind of working our way. Like I worked through kombucha. I don't really drink it that much anymore because of the sugar issue with it. But when I find a kombucha that's really low in sugar, I will go for it. Kvass. I don't know if any of you have heard of kvass. It's Kvass. I think this is Russian. It's usually made with beets. This was really cool. I was in Anchorage a couple months ago, and they don't have a Whole Foods, but they have this place. I think it was called Natural Pantry. So shout out to Natural Pantry. Anyone that lives in Anchorage, that was an awesome store. Um, and they had kvass. I had thought about making kvass from the beets that I grow, and I just never did it. And they had it, and I was like, "Oh man, I've never tried this before." And I'd heard it was like really good for you, but like I was like, "Is this just going to taste like beet juice? Is this going to be weird?" But I liked it. I actually really did like it, and they had some other flavors too. They had like passion fruit, pineapple, and the beet one was it's the classic. It had the lowest sugar content. There was a peach one. Some of them had a little more sugar, but it's lower than the kombucha. So if you can find kvass, this might be something that's like starting to pop up more. This is like super old stuff too. This has been around for like, centuries. But it's starting to, as things like fermented foods are becoming popular, things like this are becoming more well known. All right. So, and there was another one. I can't remember what it was called. It was in the same store. It was called like Tompeche or something like that, and it was a fermented drink that I think comes from like Mexico or something like that. And was made from pineapple. Pineapple comes from Brazil originally, and I think this was like a pineapple drink. So maybe that's where it originally came from. I don't know. It was pretty low in sugar, and I think it was fermented, and it was a lot better than I thought it was going to be for the amount of sugar that was in there. I was like, there's only a couple grams of sugar. This is going to taste like water, right? It didn't really. And this is the other thing. If you're used to eating things that are high in sugar and you go to something like this, you may be like, "Oh man, this is disgusting. It needs some sweetness." But if you're used to already eating like not really eating sugar and sweets, and then you have something that's got just a few grams of sugar in it, you might be like, "Oh, this is plenty of sugar. I wanted a little bit, but I don't need a ton." And a lot of that's just from the pineapple too. But like at the same time, it's also a lot less sugar than a straight pineapple juice would be, right? So I'm not a huge fan of fruit juice. I'm a fan of whole fruit, but I am a fan of these like um, fermented versions that are lower in sugar, because that what happens is the uh, the microbes in there eat the sugar, and then they produce things like a little bit of alcohol. That's why kombucha does some. There is alcoholic kombucha, but then there's like all kombucha has a tiny bit of alcohol in it. So these microbes, they basically turn sugar into other things, and that's what makes it kind of get that fermented and the fizz and the bubbles and things like that, right? So they lower the sugar content. And then another fermented food would be aged in raw milk cheeses. Now, I'm not in the raw milk camp at all. I think that's not a great idea, but raw milk cheeses are safe, um, especially commercially sold ones. So because you've got the microbes there that are fighting off the bad microbes, and you've got that balance. And so these raw milk cheeses are they have they don't taste fermented, but they do have like healthy bacteria in them and things like that. So I would be in so pretty much most aged cheeses and raw milk cheeses, right? So this is most cheeses, except for like the ones that are like really processed. Okay, So, you might want to look into like which cheeses fall into this category. Am I eating the right cheese? What cheese would work better? And then I just wanted to give you a quick tip on how to make your own fermented food. So this is just a quick deal on how to do this. You can take any vegetable you want. I mean, even fruit, I think, to some extent. And there's a whole bunch of YouTube videos that'll teach you how to do this. But the main principle is this: um, take your vegetable. You might want to cut it up so that it's in like some pieces. Um, and cabbage if you want to make um, sauerkraut. But you can do this with. I did it with bok choy. You can make a kimchi would be a different process. It's a little bit longer. You have to make like the paste. You have to get the kochikaru, chili flakes. You've got to get like some sweetness, usually like some ground up like Asian apple or like kind of like an Asian pear. Um, Usually there's maybe some dried shrimp in there. There's more that goes into it, and you make this paste, and you just kind of like, and there's salt in it, and you like massage the cabbage and so forth, and you let it sit out for a few days, and then you put it in the refrigerator. But the easiest way to ferment um, is to just take your vegetables, whatever you want, stuff that you're not going to finish. Like this is a great way to save money too. Say you've got like all those vegetables, maybe you've got some extra carrots, you've got like some, a quarter head of a cabbage, just whatever is just kind of left over, and you don't have any plans to cook it. You didn't need it all when you were like using it for whatever you're using it for, and now you don't know what to do with it. Cut that up. You could even cut it into whatever shape you want. With carrot, I might go like a little thinner. Um, with cabbage, I would just chop it so that it would fit in a jar, and then put that in a bowl and weigh the bowl, and then calculate what 2% of that weight would be. So basically, what's the weight times 0.02, and then measure out salt in the weight of that 2%. So, say it's 100 grams of vegetables, 2% of that would be 2 grams. Measure out 2 grams of salt, mix 2 grams of salt into your vegetables, massage it in there. What's going to happen is the water is going to leach out. You shouldn't have to add extra water. Sometimes you might have to, but just let that salt do its job and leach the liquid out. And then what you want is eventually you want to get that vegetable below the water line, right? And so it's just basically vegetables and salt. And then put it in some sort of container, some sort of jar, weight it down so like there's not vegetables floating on top, because those will get like moldy and stuff. And there's natural lactic lactobacillus in pretty much all vegetables, uh, raw vegetables, and then that will, and that can live in the salt environment, whereas most bacteria cannot. And then it'll like populate in there, and then you leave it out. The longer you leave it, the stronger, more potent it gets. And then after like 3 to 5 days or whatever you want to do, then you put it in the refrigerator. Okay, so that really easy, and look, you're saving money, right? This is what I'm telling you. Like, you don't have to spend a lot of money. You already have these vegetables. You were going to waste them, but like if you ferment them yourself, and that does not take a long time. That's like 15 minutes, and then that'll last for forever. It'll last for weeks to months. So fermented foods. Let's keep going with good foods. So complete proteins. So this would be like, if you're going to do meats, lean meats are better. So this would be like chicken breast, pork loin, like a round of beef, filet mignon. The leaner meats are better. Um, they have more protein, and they have more healthy like vitamins and minerals in them, and less of the saturated fats, which we want to uh, decrease the amount of that we're having. And then other good proteins would be eggs, um, legumes, so that's beans and lentils. Um, Also, whole grains have protein in them. Even like a pasta, especially like a whole grain pasta, is going to have some protein in it. Proteins are filling. They help with muscle growth. If you're doing resistance training, um, it's recommended to eat. I think it's something like, what is it, like 50 grams of protein within like 5 hours of your workout. And that's either side. So like 5 hours around the time you work out. You don't have to eat right before or right after, but that'll help you if you're doing the resistance exercises, trying to build muscles. Um, and they're really filling, and so you won't want to snack as much. If you do go overboard, there's some sort of trend in the country now where like people are just like, they're it's this extremism. First it was like all in on carbs, then it was like screw carbs, all in on fat, and now it's like screw fat and carbs, all in on protein. And it's like, dude, you need them all. Okay, like you should balance it out. Like, but like a heavier load of protein, probably not a bad idea, but like just going extreme 200 grams of protein a day, like this is just not necessary. Okay. Unless you're like bodybuilder and you're huge and you're hitting the gym constantly, you don't need like ridiculous amounts of protein. All right. But I think upping your protein can definitely help, especially with like weight loss, because it's like, it's very filling. Um, all right. And then the other thing with a whole foods diet, you want to significantly reduce snacking. All right, especially unhealthy snacking. Right. So you know what those are. It's all the junk in the middle of the grocery store. So what if you do want a snack? What if you're a little hungry? It's not time for meal yet. You haven't made it yet. What are some healthy options? Nuts, seeds, dark chocolate, whole fruit, salsa, um, yogurt. I mean, you're not gonna just eat whole salsa, but like, to me, like, I'll do a little bit of corn chip. Um, Corn chips are whole grains, at least. I know they're not the best for me. They're fried and whatnot, but like, you know, I'll do like a little bit of chips, but with like a lot of salsa. Um, and like I said, there's nothing wrong with indulging yourself. I know people that they love donuts, and they treat themselves to a donut. I don't like donuts. I mean, I don't hate them, but I don't need them. And so other people, it might be cake. Other people, it might be cookies. I don't really care about these things. I like chips, and so if I'm going to indulge myself and have something I like, I'm going to go with some tortilla chips and some salsa or some guacamole or something like that, right? So I'm getting like some goodness in there, and I'm getting like my cheat food. Okay, so that's the salsa thing for me, and then yogurt and smoothies without added sugar. That could also be a decent snack, and also like desserts too. So like, you don't have to get rid of dessert. I just would make them small, or small, infrequent, healthy. Okay. All right. Let's talk about fats. I had a whole episode where I talked a lot about fats, and I'm going to talk a lot about fats a lot more in depth on another episode. But I just wanted to kind of run down the fats, all the different types, which ones are the best, which ones are the worst. Cholesterol is related to fat. I'm going to have an episode where I talk a lot more about cholesterol, but just we're kind of doing an overview now. Um, a lot of people have been worried about cholesterol for a long time, and it's just not a concern. Not in your diet. In your blood, it's a problem. People having high cholesterol is bad, but uh, the studies that we have now basically show that, like, I mean, our bodies make cholesterol, and eating cholesterol does not seem to cause our bodies to make cholesterol. And the cholesterol we eat does not get directly absorbed into our blood. It's probably broken down and absorbed in pieces. And then, those pieces are going to get put back together into whatever the heck our body wants to do with it. It's not necessarily going to be put back together to cholesterol. Our body can make cholesterol without the components of cholesterol that are in cholesterol that you eat, right? So unless you're eating ridiculously high amounts of cholesterol, I wouldn't be concerned about cholesterol in your diet. Like, oh, that's high cholesterol, I shouldn't eat it. I have high cholesterol. No, if it's in a healthy food like an egg, I would not be concerned about it. Right? If it's in something unhealthy, I'm less worried about the cholesterol and more worried about the unhealthy food. And in fact, a lot of processed grains are the things that make us make more cholesterol. So like, even though there's no cholesterol in that, that's actually what's raising your cholesterol. So it's it's eating the unhealthy diet that's the problem. It's not the component. Um, Cholesterol itself is something that our body really needs, and there's no problem with eating it. All right. Well, not no problem, but like I said, you'd have to eat quite a lot before I'd be concerned about it. So let's talk about fats. Our number one fat's omega threes. Omega threes are anti-inflammatory. That they lead to healthy neuronal structures or neurons and neuronal function. They are found in they are found in algae, which is eaten by fish. That's well, there's three kinds of omega threes. We've talked about this before. There's EPA, DHA, and ALA. ALA is found in nuts and seeds, but the DHA and EPA is the most healthy one. DHA next, and then ALA is like it's not as good as DHA and EPA, but it's still good. All right. Algae makes it. Whatever eats the algae gets in there. So that's why it's in fish. Like if you see it in eggs, that's because those chickens ate. Uh, they ate omega three. Essentially, they gave the chickens omega three. Is that omega three that's in those eggs as good? No. It's also in grass. So grass fed meats have ALA in them. The ALA in those eggs, or the omega threes in the eggs, is probably mostly ALA as well. So if you want to get your omega threes, fish is the way to go. And then there's always the idea of like wild versus farmed, and especially when you're doing with fish oil, there's oil made from wild fish and farmed fish, and it may not tell you. Um, Farm fish, I think, tends to have more omega three in it. Like Atlantic salmon, which is all farmed, is pretty much like the highest omega 3 you can get. But does that mean it's the best? Wild is generally considered better because it's eating a diet that it finds versus like a diet that we feed it. Like I kind of think about like, I mean, are we giving that farmed fish a good diet? Just like are we giving that cattle a good diet versus like if you went hunting for a deer, like I'd kind of think that that deer would probably be more nutritious than that cow that was on a feedlot. So like I think of the fish, they're in a tight, compact space. They're being fed everything. They're eating a lot of grains. You know, they're being given omega threes, um, but it's just probably not as good. I would say farmed fish is better than no fish at all, but wild fish is better. So like kind of consider that with your budget. Um, Not all farm fish are fed omega 3s, so you don't necessarily know if what the omega 3 content's going to be on a farm fish. It could be like a lot, it could be not that much at all. So like I generally would, but then there are concerns with wild fish as far as like fish populations. So you may want to be kind of thinking about, is this a fish that we're worried about overfishing versus is this a type of fish that we're less worried about that? So that's something to kind of keep in mind as well. Um, and then farm fish may have contaminants and antibiotics that could be an issue for us, whereas wild fish may have a little bit of plastic in them. So there's downsides to each. Uh, while the mercury levels is another one that wild fish may have, but like most of the fish that are high in omega threes are not ones that are high in mercury. I don't have the list right in front of me, but I can tell you that the high mercury fish are the ones that are like at the top of the food chain. They're the ones that eat fish that eat fish that eat fish. So I'm talking about sharks, talking about swordfish, marlins, um, these tuna, these salmon is actually not. It doesn't really have that much mercury in it. To me, salmon is the perfect fish. It's like really high in omega threes. It's really tasty. It's like lower in pollutants. It's probably, I mean, but of course, if everybody ate it, it would be in danger as well. But like to me, salmon is probably one of the better ones. There's a lot of whitefish as well that are not high in mercury. Like, so this is something you might want to look up on your own. There's a list of fish that are like highest in mercury. And so those are ones you probably want to avoid. And then ones that are being overfished are ones that you may want to avoid as well. um, to help the environment. And then the ones that are higher in omega 3s, I'm going to tell you about those in a second. So, omega 3s, best fat. Next would be the MUFAs, monounsaturated fatty acids. So this is like what's found in olive oil. I believe avocado oil is the other one. So there's an anti-inflammatory qualities. It's a ligand for something called PPAR, which is helpful for the liver. And then this is gonna be controversial, but I put omega 6 next. I mean, omega 6 is getting a lot of bad rap, but like honestly, the there were signs, and this is the thing that happens in science. It's like, oh well, omega 6s are like pro-inflammatory, and that's bad. But then it's like people that eat omega 6s instead of something like saturated fat live longer, are healthier, have less chronic disease. So it's like, are these really causing this problem that we're concerned about? Even though it's like in a lab and in a test tube, it looks like it's pro-inflammatory. It's kind of like omega 3s. You put them in a pill and it's like they don't really have the effect as if they're in your diet, right? So that's one big problem with food science is it's hard to do these studies because it's like to do a study, you need to like research the exact nutrient. But then how do you but it's the exact nutrient is never something that you consume in your food. It's always mixed with a lot of other stuff, and it's like, and everything is has a different mix, and in science we have to standardize things. So it's really hard to study. But like when we've studied like people that are eating diets higher in omega 6s versus higher in saturated fats, they tend to be healthier. And so I would say if you can't afford to cook with olive oil and avocado oil, then cook with seed oil. Corn oil, soy, cottonseed, sunflower, safflower. Um, I would say that this is a better option than your beef tallow and your butter and all that sort of stuff. That's not to say that you don't ever have to use butter. I've heard that cooking with butter is better than like buttering your toast because you tend to use more butter when you add it on top of food as opposed to when you cook with it, right? Because think about it, you use a couple of pats of butter in your pan, you cook a huge meal, and it's several servings, versus you have like one or two pieces of bread and you put the same amount of butter or more on that. So once again, it's about balancing things. It's not about eliminating things. It's about increasing the healthier things and decreasing the less healthy things. You can still have your butter, but maybe you have less of it. Okay. And I would say like it, that omega 6s are better than saturated fats. At the same time, I don't think saturated fats are the devil. Um, they do contain LDL cholesterol, which is the kind that would be in your blood that would be less healthy for you. But there are two different kinds. I've mentioned this before. There's small dense LDL and there's large buoyant LDL. And it's the small dense that are the more dangerous, and those tend to be increased by processed carbs. And the large buoyant from saturated fats and like meats and things like that tend to not be as much of a problem. At the same time, uh, we've got other fats that are probably better for us than this. I wouldn't necessarily feel like I need to eliminate these fats, but I also wouldn't say, oh, these are completely fine. These are completely healthy. I'm only going to eat saturated fats. I'm always going to cook with lard and butter, and I'm going to avoid all these other things at all costs because, I'm being extreme now. All right. The next type of fat are medium chain triglycerides. This is MCTs, most commonly found in coconut oil, which is also very high in saturated fat. These can overwhelm the liver, but in small quantities, it's likely fine. I would not recommend using coconut oil as your like cooking oil of choice. I think coconut's great and like coconut products are good, but like I wouldn't use coconut oil to be honest with you. Um, I don't use it. And then the worst fat is trans fats. No amount of that one's okay. It's pretty much been eliminated from our system. But if you overheat certain oils, they can turn into trans fats. So you have to be careful with that. And processed foods, if they contain less than 0.5% trans fats, they can say it's zero, they can round down, so there might be a tiny amount in that margarine. The way they make margarine now is they basically, when you hydrogenate uh, an unsaturated oil to saturate it, right? That's basically what's happening. Um, to make it kind of thicken up like butter, you create all these trans fats. You create both types, and they have a way of like distilling these trans fats out now, but they don't get them all. And so I still would not recommend your Crisco's and your margarines. Um, just I mean, I if you need to use a solid fat for whatever you're doing, I would recommend butter and lard. But if you can get away with not using a solid fat, I would go with a liquid. All right. What are some more recommendations for foods? This is just kind of another list. I'll do the omega-3 one first because I've already kind of talked about it. So um, we got the long chain DHA EPAs. Seafoods are high in omega-3s. The recommendation is twice a week. More than that can actually, there are. It's not necessarily good to eat these every day, but 2 to 3 times a week um, is going to help you get the amount of omega-3 that you need without like eating it every day. And the fish that are highest are these smash fish. It's an acronym. We could even call it like smash O because there's an O. So S for salmon, M for mackerel, A for anchovies, S for sardines, H for herring, and then the O would be for oysters. So those are your seafoods that are highest in omega-3s. And, I think that herring and mackerel are kind of stinky. Anchovies are kind of salty. Sardines, I don't like them. I'm not a seafood guy. So if you're not a seafood guy, salmon's your best bet on there. I don't really like oysters, but that's another good option. A lot of people like oysters. But I mean, a lot of these are, the oysters are kind of pricey. Most of those other fish on that list, salmon can be a little pricey, but the other ones, those are cheaper fish. So if you like fish and you don't mind sticky, fishy stuff, these are some good ones for you. And then, of course, we've got the ALA. Those are found in nuts and seeds, flax seeds, chia seeds, walnuts. Those are some of the highest. Um, and then, kind of in that vein, what are some healthy foods? Nuts and seeds, right? Almonds, cashews, pumpkin seeds. They're high in protein, healthy fats, slow burning carbohydrates, minerals. Um, Seeds contain a lot of minerals that vegetables don't. And if you're not eating a lot of meat, oftentimes nuts and seeds is where you're going to get those vitamins and minerals that you might not have been able to get from the vegetables, right? So if you are a vegetarian vegan, make sure you're eating your nuts and seeds. In fact, everyone makes sure you're eating them because they're good for you. And it's a good snack. Um, I talked about this before. Like you only absorb, I think you absorb only like 2/3 of the calories in them. Um, and so even though they are high in calories, you don't absorb it all if you get them in whole form. And they have all these great benefits and they're filling and they've got healthy fats, they've got healthy proteins, they've got minerals in them. They're just they're really good for you. And I think a lot of people are afraid of them because of the calories. This is the thing. If you're cutting out the junk in your diet and the processed foods and the snack foods, then the nuts and seeds should fit neatly in there. Like you don't want to have nuts and seeds and the junk. And you don't want to have nuts and seeds that are junk, like covered in sugar and, you know, all this extra stuff to make it tastier, right? Um, it's got extra oil in it, and so that they can stick the flavorings, right? So they've got like the seasoned package, the seasoning on them. So they have to put oil on those nuts to get that seasoning to stick to it, right? Or you've got like the honey roasted or something, and then that's just like covered in like oil and sugar. So just whole form. I mean, so I would go with salted. A lot of people they don't want salted. I think if you eat, and maybe they taste kind of plain to you. Put them in your smoothie. Sprinkle them on top of your yogurt or something. Um, maybe if you make some overnight oats, or like some like the chia seeds, and you soak them like in like kefir or something, and sorry, kefir, and then they plump up. Maybe you put some nuts into something like that. Like, they could be a good topping. They don't, or dried fruit can be a little bit high in calories, but it does have fiber and nutrients and things like that in it. So like maybe a little bit of dried fruit with your nuts, not too much maybe, but like that can give them some flavor as well. So there's lots of ways to get those into your diet. Another thing that I recommend you eat would be like kind of eating the rainbow, right? You ever hear this, eat the rainbow? Eat lots of different colors of lots of different things. So the rainbow fruits, orange things tend to have vitamin A, for example, right? So you've got like butternut squash, sweet potatoes, pumpkin, carrots, things like that are going to have high vitamin A. So the color actually indicates that there is a different nutritional content in there. So if green vegetables tend to be higher in things like folate and iron and things like that, and then you've got red vegetables like beets, you've got orange ones, you've got yellow ones, right? You've got all different kinds of peppers too. You've got yellow peppers, orange, red, green. All of those have like different things in them. And so if you eat the rainbow with your fruits and veggies, then you're kind of ensuring that you're getting all these different nutrients, right? And then mushrooms also. Mushrooms are super awesome. Like, there's so many different kinds, and they kind of have a meaty flavor. So if you're like trying to decrease your meat intake, mushrooms are a good option to do that with. Uh, like if you're trying to make like maybe like a pasta sauce, and you don't want to use sausage, maybe you usually use sausage, use mushrooms. And because what they have in them is they have that I believe it's MSG that they have. So it's not like the fake MSG that everyone's afraid of, that they shouldn't be, by the way. That's kind of been debunked, but it's that glutamate, right? So the MSG is monosodium glutamate, but glutamate is like that umami taste, right? You got, they always said, we have all the different tastes. You've got salty, sour, bitter, sweet, right? And then spicy is not really a flavor. It's not really a taste sense. It's just kind of like lighting up all your receptors at once. It's kind of a danger signal of, hey, this is dangerous. It's spicy. Don't eat it. But in fact, it's just the plant trying to stop you from eating it. It's capsaicin in there that's giving that heat, and it's the plant trying to defend itself, but it actually isn't bad for you. So to me, it adds flavor, and then you've got the nutrients from those vegetables, those chilies that have that spice. I absolutely love spice. But a Japanese scientist, I think it was in the early 1900s, actually discovered the fifth taste, which he called umami. And I speak Japanese, so I can tell you, like, umai means tasty. So umami is like tastiness, kind of. I think it's often translated as deliciousness. So the umami is, it's that glutamate. I mean, and this is the company Ajinomoto that made monosodium glutamate. I think we associate monosodium glutamate with Chinese restaurants, but like, it's the Japanese created it. It's the company's Ajinomoto. You can buy MSG at an Asian food store, and the brand is typically Ajinomoto, which in Japanese actually means the origin of flavor. Um, and That's like the pure umami taste. And that glutamate basically is found in meat, and it's found in mushrooms. So, and there's actually lots of foods that contain umami. And like, what makes food good, this is, I'm a like I've been I've been like kind of a cook my whole life. I love to cook, as a hobby. You want to have a balance of sweet, salty, sour, not too much bitter, but sometimes you want a little bit of bitter in there too, and umami. That's what makes food good. It's the right balance of all the taste, and then throw a little bit of spice in there too, right? It's a little bit of heat, and that's what makes really delicious food. And when you mix lots of different vegetables and things together, you get that. And then mushrooms, of course, add some of that umami that maybe you're missing if you're trying to decrease your meat consumption, right? um, Berries are another great one. So berries have a lot of good nutrients in them. They come in different colors. We got blackberries, we've got blueberries, we've got raspberries or red, we've got strawberries, right? They're really low in calories. Um, there's some, like, as far as fruit's concerned, the berries are the lowest in calories of all fruit. Another cool thing about berries is they come frozen, and they are a lot cheaper when they're frozen. And then you can use them frozen in smoothies as toppings on, whatever, whether it's yogurt or it's, oats or whatever you want. Use those frozen berries on something like that. Um, and they're tasty, they're low in calories, and they contain lots of nutrients and antioxidants and all that good stuff. So, you know, I advocate all fruits and vegetables, but these are like some of the ones that I think people like the most, that may be the best if you're new to like introducing these things. And just make sure that if you're eating your fruits and vegetables, that you're avoiding products with added sugar or with fiber removed. So processed stuff. We want it in whole form. Frozen is good. Canned is actually good too. Like, I don't like a lot of things canned personally. I think tomatoes are great canned. Beans, I like to make them fresh, but I think canned beans are okay. Canned corn is okay. Like, as far as flavor is concerned, um, I would rinse uh, canned vegetables, but I think you can definitely, like, I do. Artichoke hearts are really affordable. Sometimes mushrooms in a can are okay. So canned, frozen, and fresh are all good. Those are all like minimally processed items, and so I would advocate for all of those. But when it starts to like not look like what it was, that's when you should start to get concerned. All right. What else? Leafy greens. Dark leafy greens are great. All right. So the darker the better. The darker the color, the more nutrients they have in them. So like there's different kinds of kales. There's like the dinosaur kale is like a really dark green kale. Um, spinach, of course, but like whatever you like. Turnip greens, collard greens, mustard greens. They all taste different. They all have something different to offer. Beet greens. If you grow your own food, I mean, even like carrots. Have you ever seen the carrots at the store that have the greens on the top? Have you ever had those greens? They actually, I believe that they might be related to parsley, and that's why the carrot greens kind of have a parsley like flavor. So, I mean, if it's part of the plant, it's edible. You may not have thought about eating it for whatever reason. I don't know why we sell beets without the greens on them, and if you buy beets with the greens on them and you throw them away, stop doing that. There's something different in those greens than there are in the beets. You definitely want to eat the greens as well, and just chop them up and saute them. It's super easy. So yeah, leafy greens are great. A lot of folate there, a lot of iron there. Um, so yeah, and then just this idea of like eating more plants than meat. I think in an American society, for sure, we have this habit of eating mostly meat and carbs. So like we're getting our vegetables, and I'm a huge culprit. I grew up and the only vegetable I ate was a potato. That's all I ate. I know I don't want you to get this impression that I'm like this holier than thou, like veganista or something like that. It's like, no, I mean, I grew up and I hated vegetables. I liked fruits, some, but like the only vegetable I ever ate was a potato. And it was not it was in the fried form. It was in the unhealthy form. And so I think, that's the American diet, the sad diet, the standard American diet. It's not a lot of vegetables, not a lot of color, but this is This is where you're going to get your flavor. This is where you're going to get your nutrients, and this is where you're going to get your health from. Okay. And so I always forget this when I try to say it, but it's like that Michael Pollan quote of like, eat, it's like, eat more plants less often. Wait, no, eat whole food, less of it, mostly plants. I got it. That's it. That was, and the thing is, this whole hour I've been talking, that's essentially like, that's the sum of it, right? Eat whole food. But first, you need to know what whole food was, and you've learned that. Less often, that was our last episode about the intermittent fasting, right? So just don't eat as much, and then mostly plants. Notice how he doesn't say only plants, okay? Like, we're not trying to like kid ourselves that like people are going to stop eating meat, but mostly plants. Can we do that? Can you consume more plants than you are now? Can you consume less meat? Because it's not just better for the planet, it's better for you. All right. I mean, and like I said, I do eat meat. I had tacos today. That's what I had today. I had tacos. So it's, I normally don't eat something like that, but sometimes I do. Okay, so I preach this stuff, but it's mostly about like increasing the good stuff and decreasing the stuff that's less good for us, right? That doesn't mean you can't have the things that you enjoy sometimes, all right? And what you're going to find is the more you eat like this, the less you're going to want that stuff, all right? And I know we've been talking a lot about nutrition, right? So this whole lesson today, it's about how to be healthier in general. This will help you lose weight. I know we're talking about obesity medicine. This is going to help you lose weight. It's going to help you be less depressed and anxious. It's going to help with ADHD symptoms. Um, it's going to help you live longer. It's going to help it to where you don't have to take medications like cholesterol meds and blood pressure meds and diabetes meds, right? It's so just because you're not maybe as thin as you want to be, if you don't have high cholesterol and diabetes and high blood pressure and sleep apnea and all these metabolic things, you've succeeded, right? That's a success. All right. So it's not about what's on the scale. I know everyone cares about what's on the scale, but it's about your long, it's like your health span, living a long, healthy life. Like that's what it's about. Okay. So, and once again, took longer than I thought. I was going to talk about some more foods for mental health. I'll save that for next time. And I'm going to talk about the ketogenic diet as well. I know a lot of people are probably going to be really interested in that topic. And I'm going to tell you everything about it, how to do it, when to do it, why to do it, how to manage it. I'm not an anti-ketogenic guy. I even thought about trying out the ketogenic diet at one point. I don't think it's for me. I'm somebody who really cares about like fitness and exercise and sports, and I just think it's hard to get the energy you need to exert yourself as much as I do on a ketogenic diet. But I think it is an option for some people, and we're going to talk about it, and we're going to especially talk about how it could be helpful for mental health, and especially like severe mental health problems and weight loss. All right, so I hope you enjoyed this topic today on like basically I was telling you like what you should eat and how you do it. Next time we'll talk about some mental health related stuff with food, and then we'll probably get into the what not to eat in more detail. So thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoy the show. Um, Let me just tell you what the song is today and why I picked it if you're interested. Um, so today, I have never picked a song by the Vandals. Vandals are a great band. Um, they've been around a long time. This song is called "Taste Like Chicken." It's they're kind of a joke band, kind of like NoFX, so they sing like kind of jokey stuff. So uh, this song is basically like "Don't eat chicken." It's how could you kill a chicken and all this stuff. It's kind of a jokey vegetarian song, and I think since we were talking about like eating more plants today, that it sounded like a great song for today. I do eat chicken, by the way, so it's not like I'm saying don't eat it ever. But just a fun song. Thank you for joining me today, and I'll see you next time.